home for podcasts and original music.
The Zagnif One Radio Network. It's time for another episode of Popcorn and Parachute Pants, a podcast where we discuss the very best of movies of the 1980s. And now, here are your hosts, Mr. Fingaz and Nick Rosario.
And hello to you in the back. Stop. Put the potato chips down. We're on the air. And you over there, good choice on the coffee. I like caramel macchiato myself. A little sprinkle of nutmeg on the top sets the whole thing off. I don't know who I'm talking to, these imaginary people. Hey, how are you guys all doing? Thank you for joining us this week's edition of Popcorn and Parachute Pants, episode 5. I have Mr. Fingaz from Zagnif Central. That handsome fellow over there rocking the beard I wish I could grow is Mr. Nick Rosario.
Hey.
How you doing, bud?
No, very well, sir. Thank you. It's I'm feeling it. We're getting ready to talk some more movie stuff, so it always makes me happy. Excited for that. Gonna dive into this week's film. Kind of like, my man did the triple Lindy and Back to School, Mr. Mellon.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? Triple Lindy off the dime. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh man, I tell you, get no respect at all.
Exactly.
The late
great. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you. Good times on last week's show, Weird Science.
Yeah.
For those of you that missed last week's episode, that was a good one. It looks like the Purple Rain episode went over very well. Thank you all for tuning in for the overwhelming response. So we appreciate you guys. First of all, before we get into it, if you're watching this video right now under the sound of our voice, no matter what the platform, YouTube, Facebook, you can call it a hot link on Instagram. If you're listening to the sound of our voices right now on your podcast streaming apps, whether it be Anchor or Spotify or Apple Music, go ahead and smash that like button. Find us and give us a subscribe. We are here. We are here. We talk the best of 80s movies, popcorn and parachute pants.
Or you could just send us a message and tell us we're full of it. Either way, we know you're listening.
Right.
So send us a note. Let us know what you're thinking. Curse us out. Whatever you want to do, we'll take it. We're grown men. We'll handle it.
Don't curse too hard though, because I might be middle aged, but
you don't want to know the other side of me. That's right. You don't know who I am.
Don't make me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
Like me when I'm angry.
Hey, nobody says that. No age demographic says don't try me, try God. Than the folks that are getting in the middle age right now, because we've had to deal. We've had to deal with our grandparents that are having flashbacks from World War II and Vietnam, and our parents, and now here we are in the world that we're living in right now, and we're like, today I'm not the one today, boo-boo. I'm not the one. But anyway, we're getting sidetracked. Let's go ahead and get into today's movie. Nick, my question for you today is, I try, and I don't always remember, but I try and come up with a question for you to lead us into our film.
Oh.
If you could change anything in your life that happened in your past, and you knew you had the ability to do it, would you do it?
It's funny because obviously, hypothetically, I've asked myself this question, because everybody always says, hey, if you could go back, what would you change? If you could go back, what would you do? I probably and again, my life has not been bad. I'm not trying to mislead anyone in any way. I've had some bumps along the road and some situations that got sticky and all that kind of stuff. I would almost say I don't know that I would change anything, but the selfish part of me says I would probably go back to a time when I was just getting out of high school, and I probably would have done a few things differently there if I could. Obviously, I cannot, and that's fine. My life is not horrible. Like I said, I didn't turn out to be a delinquent or anything, or I'm not a career criminal. And again, I don't criticize people who are. Wherever your life took you, your life took you. But I'm just saying that for me, my life is fine. I haven't done anything to shame my family too much, so they love me, and I got some good friends, so I'm doing all right. But yeah, maybe if I could go back to right getting out of high school and just do a couple of things differently, that might have helped a little bit more. But other than that, I think my life is pretty much probably gone the way it could have, should have. So not too many regrets, my friend. Not too many regrets.
Yeah, I feel you. I think the only thing that I would change is I would probably go back about 10, 11 years and say, hey, look, this cryptocurrency thing that people are talking about?
Oh, right. Jump in on that one.
Buy Bitcoin right now. That's about the only thing I would change. But no.
That certainly would put a difference in. Yeah, exactly.
Oh yeah, most definitely. The whole Let's Talk Football family would already have a studio. There'd be studio. There'd be a Chicago studio and a Virginia studio and an Oklahoma studio and a Michigan studio.
There you go. It'd be all over the place.
Oh yeah, global. We become the first. Almost nationwide internet podcasting studio, self-owned. We'd have our own streaming service. So anyway, but my point. Oh yeah. Oh bro, there's levels to this. I've already thought this whole thing out. Trust and believe.
We've got levels.
Trust and believe. Now, the way my life is going right now, if it pops up that we have that, please don't come looking at me for money because it didn't mean I got any. I just happened to run into some folks that got some money they can dump into it. I got some investors, but just putting that out there because I know I got a couple people like, yo, man, how you been? I ain't talked to you in ages. Yeah, nah.
Right.
I ain't got nothing for you, bro. I can't do nothing for you, man. Anyhow, the reason that I asked that is because the movie that we're reviewing today caused a lot of people to pose themselves that very same question. It was released 27 years ago. This 4th of July. Wow, does that ever make me feel old?
37 years ago.
37. Thank you. 37 years ago, this coming 4th of July. And it starred a up and coming young man who already had made his mark in the sitcom scene and a veteran television actor best known for his portrayal of the Reverend Jim Ignatowski on the ABC sitcom Taxi.
I love Taxi. Yep.
You want me to drive the taxi with no engine? Okie doke.
And there it is. There you go.
And there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, today's movie, Back to the Future.
Yes.
A classic, an absolute classic, still holds up to this day. Other actor being, of course, Michael J. Fox, who many of you may be a little bit too young to remember, came to prominence as the very precocious and uber intelligent teenager Alex Keaton on the sitcom Family Ties. Was part of that Thursday night lineup that wound up. God, NBC ruled Thursday nights for a long time. You know that?
Pretty much.
Because you had Family Ties and Silver Spoons, and then that rolled over in the Cosby Show, different world. I mean,
Cheers for
Cheers also
8 o'clock slot, man. Cheers was on at 8.
Dude, they essentially ran network TV for all of the 80s going into the 90s. I mean,
even to 2000. Friends ran from 94 to 2004.
That's true.
They ruled Thursday night up until 2000s, right?
Yeah, Friends and Seinfeld. I mean,
exactly.
For almost 2 decades, NBC could not miss. But we digress. Today we're here to talk about Back to the Future again, directed by Robert Zemeckis, released on July 3rd, 1985.
Yes.
The flashback to 1985. Reagan was still in office. The Cold War was still a thing. The Berlin Wall was still up. Michael Jackson was the hottest artist on the face of the planet. And I had a pair of parachute pants in my closet.
You probably did.
I know. I definitely did. I had my mother allowed me one pair. That was the only one I was allowed to buy.
Popcorn.
Yeah, I did a lot of that too, and that was around about the time of the invention of microwave popcorn. So there you go. We could jump in the Delorean and go back in time and witness the birth of what would eventually become this podcast.
There you go. There it is. There it is, my friends. There it is.
And for those of you that are completely unfamiliar, little synopsis of the movie. Michael J. Fox plays Marty McFly, who has 2 loving parents, and older brother and sister who are they're they're your stereotypical quirky suburban family.
Yeah.
And but he again is an awkward teenager who happens to have a girlfriend
Yes,
who's a
does.
music enthusiast who has a band, and his very best friend is a very eccentric older gentleman who lives across town and is a brilliant scientist who is looked at as a cuckoo, who has come up with this invention that could potentially allow for time travel.
Yes.
And then under a situation of duress, we find out it actually works. And our hero winds up going back in time to his very hometown and meeting his parents and getting to see in real time the events that unfolded that led to his parents meeting. And in some way almost messes up his coming into existence.
Well,
if you change anything in the future, Marty, it could severe repercussions for the current space-time continuum.
Well, that's the beauty, I think, of this movie, is that it not only does it beg the question, what if you could time travel, but it shows you just how much that maybe wasn't meant for man to be able to do because of what you could, what you're messing with and what, it's kind of that bigger picture feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I hate to, I'm not trying to equate it necessarily to like, God, but I mean, there's a plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the way your life should be going. You're going to go back 30 years and change the course of your life, possibly erasing yourself from existence in the process, just to see, just to be. So a lot of things in this movie, but let me tell you something, and I'll tell you something. This for me is probably one of the best movies of the 80s. Because when we were talking, we did Raiders of the Lost Ark a few episodes back.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about how it kind of had everything. Well, this is like science fiction wrapped into teen comedy, wrapped into romance, wrapped into adventure, wrapped into. This movie has everything. And when I say this movie has everything, this movie really does have everything. And
absolutely.
I think just even with just looking at the way that the cast was, because for those of you who may not know, this movie actually, they wanted Michael J. Fox initially to star in it, but his family tie schedule was such that he couldn't do it. So they hire an actor, a very good actor named Eric Stoltz, to play the part of Marty McFly.
Mm-hmm.
And Eric literally filmed on the movie for probably a month and a half at least. And as they would check daily, they're just like, it's just not working. I mean, he's a good actor, but he wasn't what they were quite wanted for the part. They wanted somebody who was a little more comedic. Eric played very seriously, very close to the vest. And so they found a way to somehow work an arrangement with the Family Ties people to get Michael J. Fox to do the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And so after a couple of months, they literally started reshooting. They reshot everything with Michael that they'd done with Eric. And then they were back off and running through the movie. And it's funny because they actually had to pay Eric the salary that they were going to for the movie because that was in his contract, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So they actually had lost a bunch of money before the movie was even halfway made. They already lost a bunch of money because of everything that happened. So just the reason I bring that up in general is because we'll get to this because this is something important. A lot of people question. There's a couple of spots where you wonder if it's Michael J. Fox or if it's Eric Stoltz that was left in the movie because there was a time crunch at the end to get the movie out by July 3rd, 4th, whatever it was of that year because they didn't finish filming till well into March, I believe, March or April. And so they had originally pushed back the release date, and then they started getting good feedback, so they pushed it back up to that July 4th weekend. So there are a couple of things that could be, so that's why I think it's also good too. This movie is just chock full of stuff like that. So we could be here all day talking about this. But in any sense, let's get back to where we were here for a moment. And we're talking about, go ahead, Mr. Mr. Fingers, and of course the plot and what the movie is actually about.
Oh, well, I was just going to touch on what you said about them having to pay out a bunch of money. I think they did okay. They filmed the whole thing on a $19 million budget, and they wound up raking in 388, almost 389 million.
Highest grossing movie of that year. You got it.
Yeah, this is another one of those movies. If you heard us talk about, that was a year-long feature in the movie theater, year plus,
easily,
year to 2 years. It was just that absolutely popular, and for us. It's easy for us to watch the same movie on repeat because we have video streaming. That was a big deal for somebody to say, I've been to see Star Wars 17 times. I've been to see Back to the Future 15 times. I've seen Back to the Future. I mean, there's one kid that went and seen the movie, I think it was 50, 60 times by the time we came back to school for what would have been our sophomore year. I think was my sophomore year of high school.
Wow.
So that basically means that but then too, back in the day, you could pay for the 2:00 movie and sit through the 4:00 showing. They weren't checking for people.
Right.
Like
Was that not the beauty of movie theaters back then, right? I could literally go in and buy a ticket at noon, and I could sit there all evening and watch the movie all day if I wanted to.
Yeah. Now, now granted, that's not what you should do. We're not trying to encourage any
activity,
but
we're just saying that it was a little more lax back in the day, especially if there was nobody there. They didn't, you could stay through to the evening shows.
You basically would just hang out. You would hang out, or they would tell you if you got there for it. Basically, how they did part of the reason for that though was because a lot of times back in the 80s they were still doing double features.
Yes.
So if you got there and you bought a ticket for the double feature, but you missed the first movie, they'd say, well, the second movie's getting ready to start. Just sit through the first one, bing, bang, boom. They weren't checking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then you go back, watch the other one again, you watch another one again. Yeah, it's just, believe me, I had my fair share of doing that. I've spent more than 8-9 hours in a movie theater before, let me tell you.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, now they've got these corporate standards where every theater has to be cleaned out after every showing and yada yada yada. You got to, you know what I mean? You got to, especially with COVID and things like that. So now people go in and then they come out, the crew comes in and they got 15 minutes to clean the whole auditorium before.
That's it.
Dude, I used to be a custodian for a movie theater. That is rough work. And the stories about the things you find in the movie theaters are true. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Oh, come on. We should do a show on that because I worked at 3 years for a theater myself. We can compare notes.
Okay. I'm putting it on the list. Don't play.
Because I'm telling you some of the stuff I found, my friend. Let me tell you.
Things you find in a movie auditorium.
Sometimes I found people. That's all I'm going to say about that right now.
Oh, yeah.
Run, Forrest, run.
Okay. Yeah, no, right? So anyway, and this is another one of those movies, since we talked about this being one of the greatest movies of the 80s. If you remember episode 2, we talked Raiders of the Lost Ark, and we talked about how great, one of the things that made the movie great was the score.
Yeah.
Well, this movie also scored by none other than that's another John Williams, isn't it?
Well, he's got the movie score, correct. Which for those who aren't maybe familiar with that as well, when you talk about soundtrack to a movie, there's 2 different elements. You have the score, which is all the instrumental music underneath scenes and that sort of thing. That's the score. The soundtrack is the music in the movie with the actual lyrics, vocals, and all that stuff. So just in case you weren't sure on what those 2 different things are, you have the score that's played underneath, and the soundtrack is the actual songs that appear in the movie.
And actually, I have to stand corrected. I am such a John Williams fan that I just assumed that it was John Williams. It's actually Alan Silvestri.
Yeah, it's a different guy. I remember, it wasn't Williams, but the orchestrations here, though, and then the score here is still beautiful. And it's good stuff. It's very memorable. It's very good.
I mean, dude, you can't help but hear that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And then everything, just during the clock tower, there's music, just all good stuff. But of course, getting into the music a little bit, which, there's no rules here on Popcorn and Parachute Pants. We will go all over the place, my friend. And the music in this movie is phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Huey Lewis and the News were contracted to do a song for the movie and ended up doing 3 or 4. And then Huey appeared in the movie in disguise as one of the judges during the Battle of the Band scenes early in the movie. So he even got himself I think this is his first appearance on film. He would go on to do a few others, but his first appearance, and again, he said he would do it as long as they didn't credit him. So it is an uncredited role for him in this movie. You just see him in disguise. You know it's him, but he's wearing a big glasses and a hairpiece and the whole thing. But
well, not only that, my friend. Do you remember the song that Marty and his band played at their audition?
They're doing The Power of Love.
Yes, and he's like, ah.
Yeah.
So
good.
So backstory. Marty's in a band, and he and his guys are hoping that the band will make it big, and they've got this battle of the bands they got to audition they got to get to, and they show up, and Huey Lewis is sitting there in a cameo role as one of the judges, and they just break out and start playing Power of Love,
chords, guitars, and like that's too loud.
And Huey Lewis is like next.
Yeah, exactly.
So and the fact that Marty plays the guitar plays into the movie later.
It does.
So, and this is another movie, as you say, it is a complete movie. It's got it's not necessarily, it's a little bit more realistic in today than it was 40 years ago, but you've got the plot, which is well put together. You've got an excellent cast of actors and actresses that play their roles exceptionally well.
Oh, absolutely.
You've got the teen angst. You got the teen angst with the awkward kid. You've got the bully.
Yeah. Oh, well, you got a group. We got the henchman and his buddies.
Yeah. And this is a classic. Generally tends to run that way with the teen movies. You got a group of bullies, and one of them is the leader. And
other three dudes,
none other than Mr. Biff Tannen. God, love that guy. And Biff Tannen, Thomas F. Wilson as Biff Tannen.
Yes.
And then of course Crispin Glover.
Yeah, as the dad.
I mean, he's, now that I've seen him outside of some other movies, he's a little strange because he play the Thin Man in Charlie's Angels.
The Charlie's Angels. He was in a movie with Keanu Reeves called, what was that called? I started it and then I couldn't think of the name of the movie. So my apologies for that one.
No, that's fine.
River's Edge. River's Edge.
Mm-hmm.
River's Edge was the movie of another 80s like angst movie. But yeah, Crispin Glover actually turned out to be a pretty decent actor, just kind of a strange guy.
Yeah, he kind of goes in that category with like the River Phoenixes and things like that. Like he's in Joaquin Phoenix. They're excellent at what they do, but the social skills might not necessarily be all there. But once the camera comes on, they're 100% professional.
They're 100% right. Exactly.
Then
but Leah Thompson, of course, as the mom. Even Biff's gang. I don't think people realize that in Biff's gang, you have Billy Zane, who, of course, would later go on to be Mr. Hockley in Titanic, for those who are Titanic fans. And an actor named Casey Shamashko is another one of who is actually a local Chicago boy. Him and his sister Nina were born here and raised here and got kind of their start here. And he plays one of Casey was popular for Young Guns. He was in the Young Guns movie. Of course, did a few other things, 3 O'Clock High, stuff like that. So just a good cast all the way around. Again, you had, I think the biggest, as you said, you got people who are all the same age, because the plot, as we know, as Marty goes back to 1955 in Doc's DeLorean-made time machine, and now he has to figure out what he has to do. So he has to find the 1955 version of Doc Brown and convince him that 30 years later, he has invented this time machine and that he needs his help so he can get back to Doc 30 years later, which is funny in itself, that scene where he tries to tell him who he is and what he's done. That's very funny in and of itself. But that's the plot of the movie, and that's how we get started with all this. And so you have this big convergence of, okay, Marty's like, well, good. I'm in 1955. I could stick around. You could show me around for a couple of days, because the big event, as you'll come to find out, is that there was lightning that struck the clock tower. Because the only way, Doc Brown says, the only way we can get the kind of energy we need to make this work is a bolt of lightning. He goes, but of course you never know when one's going to strike. Enter Marty from 30 years in the future going, Well, I know when one's going to strike. Look at this. Look at this. And so they go about, they have 3 days, I think it is, before the big lightning strike. He's got a few days there or a week, whatever it is. And so, but Doc tells him, no, you can't interfere with anything or you'll change the course of the future. And so then, of course, in true
he
movie
interferes
fashion,
with everything.
Everything, exactly. In true form, he meets his dad first. He meets George, and he realizes that this is his father. And you can just tell he's like, oh, great. Dad was a real, guys picked on him, blah, blah, blah. Well, of course, Marty, not remembering what Doc told him, interjects himself in a soda shop where his dad's being picked on and has his first encounter with Biff and his gang. And so again, now the movie's off and running with every madcap thing you could think of, how they're going to reverse this stuff, how these things are going to happen. And again, just there's so many aspects to this movie, even the special effects for being a 1980s film. Some of the effects were great. Like, and you just, this is definitely one of those, for those of you who know Zemeckis movies going forward and some of the other stuff that he made, this was like his opus because he put everything, I think, into this with the special effects and the story and everything. Like, this was just his big, I'm putting it all out there because I need to prove that I can do this. And it's just a spectacular film. I mean, Mr. Fingers, I'm going to ask you, sir.
Yes, sir.
Because I know that this is a movie that you and I have talked about off screen, and we really wanted to do it. But what did you, what's your takeaway from this movie? You asked me before we got on, if you could change something, or if you could go back, what would you do in a situation like that? Like, if you had the power to do that?
Well, like I said, I wouldn't touch a thing. I'd figure out how the heck to get back, and I figured. I mean, if it wasn't a situation with Marty, like he was just thrust into it by accident, if it was something I voluntarily did,
right?
You know what? I got to be honest. The older I get, the more I'm like, well, I am, and I'm going to sound like a total sap, like I'm totally playing into this for saying it, but I'm in a good place in life right now. And where I am right now is because of things that happened to me or the situations I put myself in 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago. Sure. So I wouldn't change a lot. If nothing else, I would kind of try and what I really would try and do is figure out a way to go back, like Ghost of Christmas Past, and just observe for nostalgia's sake, like to go in a mall and see it 100% full and see a Cinnabon and have an actual food court or go and eat fast food when fast food actually tasted good.
Yeah. You're preaching to the choir, pal. Let me tell you, if I could have 80s life back for just like 2 minutes, I was, like I said, going to the mall when the mall was full with teenagers and record stores and movie stores and all this stuff, and it was alive back then, man.
It was it is as conscious as people are of where their kids are at all times, at least until they get driver's licenses. But I mean, dude, like it was nothing for our parents to just, if you didn't have an allowance or a job, to just go, here's the keys and $20, go to the mall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And we would take your brother to the mall and just walk around the mall and no adult supervision whatsoever, and just walk around the mall, drop a couple bucks in the arcade, get a little Cinnabon, maybe go spend a couple dollars at Radio Shack. Now there's a throwback.
I worked at a Radio Shack. I remember.
I did too, my friend. Looks like we can find out more and more in common about each other.
Simpatico, my friend. Simpatico.
Yeah, I even managed the video arcade for a while. Remember when the tilt arcades were everywhere?
Dude, arcades were the best. Are you kidding?
I mean, the advent of home gaming systems essentially wiped out video arcades. But
they did, but
there was nothing like on a Saturday. I mean, it used to drive me crazy when I worked in there, but to go in the arcade on a Saturday, it with a pocket full of quarters, you throw your quarter up on that video game and say, "I got next," like you on the basketball court. Boom, I got next.
That's right.
Waiting to play Ninja Gaiden or Turbo or Street Fighter 2 or
Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man,
right? Galaga,
Centipede, Galaga, right?
So I really would not change a thing. I would just kind of move forward because now you're going to think this is weird. I have been mentally preparing myself for the day when future me shows up.
Oh, I see. Is that what? Okay.
I have been mentally preparing myself. So if future me ever shows up and said, "Don't go down to that Church's Fried Chicken down there on 23rd Street tomorrow night. They got a bad case of salmonella going on. You might want to go over and just get yourself some microwave chicken from the grocery store." Then that's what I'm going to do. But I definitely would go back, and I wouldn't want to be, and even then I wouldn't want to be nasty, stinking, filthy rich. I just want to have enough money to not have to work. I
think that's most of us, right? Like we could go back and find a way where we could make a little money so that our retirement wouldn't be so bad, or we could retire early and just enjoy life in all its splendor, right?
Oh yeah, I would go back in time and come back to find myself retired. I think is what I would like to do. That's about it. But yeah, man. To go back to something you said earlier, we were talking about. You mentioned Billy Zane, who played Matchstick O'Malley. He was part of Biff Tannen's gang. He also wound up showing up in another film, which we discussed in our last episode when we talked about Bill Paxton, who went on to star in Tombstone. Billy Zane also had a prominent role in Tombstone. He was Mr. Fabian. So you got all these 80s actors. You're seeing all these instances, ladies and gentlemen, where folks who may or may not have been well known at the time that wound up staying in the business and growing and working with a lot of the same people.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right, my friend.
Yeah, and so I absolutely, this is another of my faves. I have to say this is probably maybe I'd have to go back and double check, but this one here is a franchise, and it's one of the few franchises that I like every single movie. Like nothing ever gets old.
Correct.
I mean, even the sight gags with Biff Tannen, somehow or another, if you see Biff Tannen in a Back to the Future movie, you know somehow or another there's going to be manure involved.
Yeah, exactly.
And that never gets old.
Right.
Never. I mean, we see it early on in this movie, and then we see it a little bit later on in the second movie, and then in the third movie, it's like right when you think you're not going to see it, it's at the end of the climax of the film. Yeah. You're like, "Yep, there's the manure." Hate manure.
Right, manure.
Yeah. So, and then of course, we can't talk about the brilliance of this movie, the plot, the story, the cinematography, the score, the music, without touching on these two guys right here.
Yes.
Because these two guys, hands down, made this movie. I don't know too many more people. I honestly, to tell you the truth, I don't know another actor that in that time frame that could have played Doc Brown. Now, I tell you who came along later that could have played Doc Brown. I think Jim Carrey would be great.
Oh, you're talking about in terms of just the manic, frenzied.
Well, actually, yeah, but you know what? I'm gonna have to walk that back a little bit, because Jim Carrey's thing is he just goes full out manic. Like with Christopher Lloyd, it's a controlled mania.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's like he's out of his mind. He's eccentric, but his brain is in total control. Jim Carrey is just like whatever comes in, whatever pops in my head is coming out.
But I want to show you something. This was something I found. These were men who were actually considered for the role of Doc Brown. Listen to this list: Jeff Goldblum, John Lithgow.
Nah.
Dudley Moore, Ron Silver, Robin Williams, John Cleese, Mandy Patinkin, Gene Hackman, and James Woods were all considered for the part of Doc Brown.
Okay, run me back through that list. Start at the bottom and work your way back up.
Well, James Woods, I know James Woods has the appearance to be manic, but not the right fit, I don't think. Gene Hackman might have been too old by that point. I don't know.
Gene Hackman, nah. You know why I say no to Gene Hackman? Because Gene Hackman already had a flagship role as a manic genius, a manic criminal genius. Well, two of them. Well, a manic criminal genius in Lex Luthor with the Superman.
Oh franchise. Yeah, Lex Luthor. Yeah, Lex
so Luthor. No.
Mandy Patinkin.
Only thing I like
actor. I don't know.
I liked him in Alien Nation.
There you go. John Cleese. That would have just been funny. I think John Cleese is just a funny guy, for my money.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. I don't know if you'd have made a good fit for Doc Brown though. But didn't you say John Lithgow was on that list?
Robin Williams, Ron Silver, who's a Broadway actor. Ron Silver did a ton of stuff. Dudley Moore is the funny one because him and Michael J. Fox are probably the same height, so that would have been hilarious to see the two short dudes.
I could just see him. Could you see him in his British accent in Twin Pines? Twin Pines going, Marty, you're not going to believe it. I was having myself a nip before I went to bed. I'll admit it. And then I fell down and I woke up and I saw this. Like I could see him doing that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. But I think on this list, I could see John Lithgow.
John Lithgow.
Possible Doc Brown. I like him as an actor, but it's
John Lithgow. And Robin Williams, actually probably good that he got a pass on that because he wound up being perfect for Flubber.
Well, Flubber.
Okay. Yeah, but I mean, it's still, it was,
Robin Williams. Wait. Now, you're my boy and everything, but I am really going to take exception with the fact that we're talking about the great Robin Williams and you bring up Flubber. Are you serious? Are you serious right now?
In the sense,
Flubber.
In the sense that it was him, an opportunity for him to play a scientist. It's the only one that I can think of off the top of my head. You get what I'm getting at? Now, granted, Back to the Future was a much larger movie than Flubber, but for what he did in Flubber was what they needed. For what Christopher Lloyd did was perfect for what they needed for Back to the Future. Robin is also, I put him in the same category with Jim Carrey. They can be perfect as mad scientists, but they would be like completely manic. And Christopher Lloyd was better at keeping the mania that
the casting was perfect. I agree with you. Like I said, I just thought it was interesting some of those names on that list.
Oh God,
I agree with you. The casting on this is perfect. Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd made a great team, and all of their scenes together, man, they just work. Even even the parts, where Marty finds out that Doc is kind of in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find out. And again, if you haven't seen the movie,
it is 40-something years old. You need to go see it. 37 years old. You need to go see it.
It's just about 2 hours in length, but I guarantee you will enjoy. You'll laugh. You'll cry. You'll smile. You'll do all that stuff. You'll dance around the enchantment under the sea, or as the daughter calls it, the fish under the sea dance. There's a lot here for everyone, and I think this is a movie that I recommend. If you haven't seen it, go right away. Get on a streaming service. Rent yourself Back to the Future and enjoy for 2 hours. Take some time on a Sunday, on a Saturday when you have some time. Watch Back to the Future. But back to where we were getting with the chemistry here. The important part of any team is the back and forth. It's like tennis. You're serving it up to your partner, they serve it back. And the reason why I say that I think this team works is just for that reason. Anytime, whether it's Michael J. Fox setting up Christopher Lloyd or Christopher Lloyd setting up Michael J. Fox, it just works. It seems seamless. They just, again, boom, 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 boom. It seems very natural. They seem very comfortable with each other. It's just a great team. And again, obviously the writing in this movie is great. The way they handle the plot points, the way that they, again, when you're doing a time travel movie, you obviously, again, you're suspending your disbelief, but the writing is so good, it's almost believable. You don't believe that this would happen and that now Marty is in this situation that he's trying to get out of, because one of the big plot points in this movie, for those of you who have not seen it, is that when he goes to 1955, his mother starts to fall for him when they actually meet, because what happens is, instead of what happened initially was when the dad hit George McFly with the car, and that's how they met, he hits Marty with the car because Marty pushes George out of the way from getting hit. Of course, the funny part of that is that George was a peeping Tom, and the reason he fell off because he was in a tree watching the ring, getting dressed. So he falls off, the dad hits him with the car, and there you go. But here, Marty pushes him out of the way or whatever, and now you have a whole different plot, and that sets the story going forward, because now Marty has to try to figure out a way, one, to spurn the advances of his mother, who he's already met now. So that kind of changes the scope of things. because he has to get his parents together. All the while, his mother's wants him more than he wants the dad. So try that for a triangle, eh?
And every scenario every time he finds himself in another scenario where instead of stepping back and letting things happen, he winds up stealing the thunder, like with the incident with the car, and then the incident in the soda shop where he takes off, and it's funny how certain things, how the blending of times in culture, certain culture references, like he's got on his Calvin Klein underwear.
Yes.
So she's like, your name's Calvin, isn't it? Because that's what name was on your underwear.
Right.
So
right.
she thinks his name's Calvin Klein. And then in the effort to get away from Biff and his gang, he steals a scooter from a kid and inadvertently turns it into a skateboard, inventing a skateboard like some 25 years before those came into prominence.
Exactly.
So there's all these different
good stuff. Yeah.
You know, and here it is where and each of those is an opportunity where George would have had an opportunity to
be the hero in a sense.
To be the hero or meet Lorraine and reset the timeline that Marty is just so busy. Marty, for all it, God bless Marty. Love him, but he's just totally, he can't get out of his own way.
Right, he screwed up everything.
He can't get out of his own way. Like everything Doc tells him not to do. Typical teenager.
Right.
Your parents go out of town, leave you at home by yourself. They say, okay, these are the rules. You can do all of this except. And what is the first thing you do as soon as you find out your parents are far away? The first thing they say, don't do.
Exactly.
You know, or you wind up throwing a big party at the house and one of your friends winds up doing it, you know?
Right, exactly.
So it's a wonderful movie. The angst, and I mean, we already knew that he was great at playing an angsty teenager. Those of us that were familiar with him from Family Ties. Just the way he delivered his lines, Doc. I wish I could do my voice. My voice is too deep to do Michael J. Fox, but a little bit. It's just like, oh, Doc, we're not going to be able to get to 1.21 gigawatts to get.
What's a gigawatt? I want to know what that is. What's a gigawatt? No.
That would. I'm not even gonna. That's so many cotillion watts of electrical power or something like that. So
there you go.
And the thing about this movie is, it became such a cultural phenomenon. I believe, if you go online and search 121G, it takes you to AutoZone or Advanced Auto Parts.
Oh, really?
They have an actual it's a fictional, but it's a flux capacitor.
Oh, a flux capacitor, yeah. Which, of course, you got to make sure that's working because, you know.
Yeah, of course, because if the flux capacitor is not working, then you're completely stuck. Matter of fact, I'm looking that up right now.
What, flux capacitor?
The 121G O'Reilly Auto Parts. That's where it is. If you Google 1.21G right now, O'Reilly Auto Parts will show up with a flux capacitor.
There you go.
And it's not a real item. It says it's not available for purchase. But check this out. It's just gigawatts, 121. Material compatibility, plutonium. Working speed, 88 miles an hour. Maximum power, 121 gigawatts. Modifications, time travel, quantity 1. Time travel at your own risk. Plutonium is required to properly operate the flux capacitor used by the onboard nuclear reactor, which powers the flux capacitor, blah, 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 blah. Requires a stainless steel body of a 1981 to 83 DeLorean DMC-12 to properly function. And it says non-functional item display for entertainment purposes only. So it's become such a cultural phenomenon that it's infiltrated a major auto parts corporation to list it on its website.
There it is, right.
Not to mention, I don't know. Did you guys get the DeLorean tour in 1985, 2015? Did you guys get the DeLorean tour?
No.
You did not get the DeLorean tour. That is such a shame. So check this out. I think it was October 30th, 1985.
Yeah, October 30th. Yeah, that sounds right.
So that's Back to the Future Day. So October 30th, 2015, all over Northern Virginia, there was a guy with a replica DeLorean with a built-in flux capacitor that was driving it around town and just showing up at these events all over the Metro DC, where this guy would show up with this working model of his DeLorean. Wow. And it was of course I was working, so I didn't get to see it, but it was absolutely awesome. So it's become that much
Oh yeah.
Of a cultural phenomenon. That even
For
to this
sure.
point, if you just say 1.21 gigawatts, there's still people that are too young to remember when the movie came out that still get the reference. That's
Oh
how
yeah, for
big this
sure.
movie is.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, the scope and the reach that it had, obviously, again, it's in the National Film Registry for one of the greatest movies of all time.
And
Like it's
deservedly
not just
so.
yeah, and I mean, this is not just we say it's one of the greatest movies of the 80s. This is one of the greatest movies of all time.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
not just, so when you get, put into the National Film Registry, that's saying something. And
It's
I
a
think
big deal, peoples. If
it's
you're not
definitely
understanding.
it's absolutely a huge deal. And I think, again, we've gone over some plot points, and I think a lot of didn't talk about this movie. I think about the cultural significance of it only because it's a movie that, as Mr. Fingers and I were talking about, what would you do faced with a similar situation, right? It's that eternal question of, are you satisfied with your life? Is there something you would do different? If you could go back, what would you do? What point in your life would you go back to? What would you not change? What would you change? How would you change it? Whatever. And I
Yeah.
think this movie gives you all of that, and it also shows you I think in the end, overall, when the movie is done, I think it shows you a little bit of how to be satisfied with what you have now,
Right.
and what it is, what's really important in that sense.
Right.
And I think to me, that's why this movie is so great,
Oh,
because
absolutely.
it gives you all of that, but in the end, it pretty much turns it around on you and says, you know what though, what you have is just as good. And again,
Right.
it sets up for the sequel, so of course there's more. There's two more movies after this one. But again, it's and then of course, second movie goes in and the third movie goes in.
Where
But
we're going, we don't need roads.
exactly, which again is funny because when you think about some of the things they predicted in part two, that's
We're
what
kind
era we're living in now.
yeah, we're kind of getting
But
there. We're getting
well,
closer.
we are. Remember, they
People have
predicted
been
the Cubs would beat Miami in the World Series in 2015?
right.
And they won in 2016. They didn't beat the
Yeah.
Miami team, but the fact that the Cubs won the World Series 30 years, after the
Almost.
second
Yeah.
movie, yeah, that's kind of funny that that's what they were predicting. It's just certain things like it came into so I just think that's funny. Like it's always amazing how people always try to predict things or try to get, but again, it's just a matter of being satisfied, I think, with where you are now and understanding that, yeah, life is life. And, you know, I don't know. Yeah, just to me, that's a big message in the film. I think
Yeah.
maybe not a lot of people realize that, or maybe they don't see it that way, and that's fine. That's what I kind of took away from it. Like, that's
Oh yeah.
overall big picture type stuff.
Yeah. And we can't go deeper into the film without talking about, you mentioned some of the things that it predicted. Well, there were also things that that kind of were brought up as, I won't call them, well, I don't know, I can't call them sight gags, but they were brought up in a way that the things that were invented before by the chain of events that Marty set in motion.
Right.
Like we talked about the skateboard, we talked about Calvin Klein, where there's also the climax of the film itself with the enchantment under the sea dance,
Yeah.
where the lead singer of the band cuts his hand and Marty has to sit in.
Yes, on a guitar for the next
On
song.
guitar, and he winds up playing Johnny Be Good. So the guy's like, yo Chuck, what up? It's Marvin, your cousin Marvin Barry. You know that sound you're looking for? Well, listen to this. And then he really starts going off on the guitar and playing this really crazy solo. And it's like, maybe that's a little bit, you guys aren't ready for that. Right. But your kids are gonna love it.
Right, exactly.
So it's kind of an all around, and it wraps all of everything up into one nice, neat little bundle before it comes back to the end of the movie with, of course, the resolution that Doc's life is saved and his parents are still together. Yes. And now his father is a very assertive man. He's managed just to somehow fix the scenario where his father's an assertive man. He winds up taking out Biff Tannen.
Exactly, and that's the important part here. Good triumphed over the evil, right? Because he found a way to slay the dragon that is Biff Tannen, with the help, of course, of his son Marty, in a roundabout way.
Oh, dude, How about that scene where he scares George into complying with?
Oh,
Yeah, when he goes in
Well,
with
he puts on
the
his face.
radioactive
He puts
suit
with the radioactive dude
with the
playing
Walkman on his head.
with it's Eddie Van Halen guitar solo of something, and it says he's just screaming, George, I am coming to you for he's, and he just George's face is like he's like
Which
oh
he eventually winds up writing a book about, and
yes
you know, you see
exactly
that they even tie that back in where his book comes in, and Marty's
yes
looking at the cover, and he's like, "Holy crap, that was me," you know.
right, no
So,
exactly it's so fun like I said, and that's the thing too like this movie has great callbacks. It's smart. You know,
mhm,
it doesn't, and again, it doesn't make the audience feel dumb or make you feel like you can't appreciate what they're doing.
right,
Like some movies can talk kind of in a way talk down to you. You know, you're like, "Ah, okay, you know, suspend disbelief, but this is still way too much. All this stuff in here is really believable, and the
hmm,
movie has a lot of heart. And again, it shows you like what's in the end what's really important and what really matters. And I think that's to me, again, anytime you can laugh, cry, dance, shout, scream, whatever in a movie, that's a great movie to me. And you can do all those things, man. It's great. And I think that's Back to the Future will always hold a special place for me for that reason.
oh
Because
yeah,
it's just an
and
all around great movie. Uh, the story's great. The music's great. The score is good.
mhm.
The acting is good. Mikey J. Fox became a star after this movie.
Yeah, and well, I mean, he already was a star, but he really became a mega
Well,
star
I'm talking about
because
movie star. Like he started doing more movies after this. I mean, he had family ties, and he ended up, obviously he went back to television with Spin City, which is unfortunately when he was diagnosed with Parkinson's,
mhm.
and he had to leave that show. But Michael did movies for a little while after that
Oh yeah,
because
I
the
mean,
movie thing really took off for him. Well, Teen Wolf was right before that, or right after that. Not
Teen
sure they
Wolf,
were
and
they were in the same like year or so. But
yep,
right, so Back to the Future might have been first. But yeah, you had Teen Wolf.
Secret
Uh,
of My Success.
which I that's a movie that movie I actually like. He did Light of Day with Joan Jett, which I liked, where he played they played middle class rockers from Cleveland. They were
Oh
brother and
really?
sister. Oh, you've never heard of Light of Day?
Maybe I heard of it and I just never watched it.
I would say definitely go back and watch Light of Day. Joan Jett very good in her acting debut. Michael J. Fox plays her brother, and they're a struggling band in the Midwest dealing with life and their parents and working and all that. Really good. Really, I like the movie. It has that 80s feel to it as well. Filmed all over the Chicago and Indiana and stuff. So very good movie. Yeah, Michael did The Frighteners, and like I said, he started working in movies until he went back to television. But he
Yeah,
became a
and
star with this movie. He truly did. Like his wattage was after this movie just blew up. He
yeah,
was a
and it's
big
funny.
star.
It's funny when you go back and you look at it, the kind of the 6 degrees of separation, how it was all tied together. Because remember when he was on Family Ties, his girlfriend on Family Ties was Courtney Cox, but then they broke up. And I think they
Yes.
brought in Courtney Cox after, she had that brief moment of glory at the end of the Bruce Springsteen video,
Right.
Dancing
Dancing
in the
in the
Dark.
Dark.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for those of you that don't know, Courtney Cox, yes, she got her start in a Bruce Springsteen video.
Yes.
And then they broke up and they wrote in another girlfriend for
Tracy
him,
Pollan
who Tracy Pollan, who to this day he is now still married to.
became his wife, right? They got married.
Yeah, became his wife in real life. But there's a couple of things that I wanted to touch on real quick before we
Yeah, of
jump
course.
off of here. And one of
Yeah.
those was we talked about Huey Lewis, but we really didn't get into the thick of how really he contributed
Movie.
to this movie. Two of the biggest hits of that year were Power of Love and Back in Time,
Yes.
which were both part of the soundtrack. And then God, there was another one. There was another song that was part of that soundtrack, not part of the sound. They didn't include it as part of the soundtrack, but oh God, I can't think of it, and I'm looking it up right now. But he did the
Oh yeah,
Power of Love,
I was doing the same thing to see if I could catch it. And then yeah, let me see.
and for those of you that are that again, I'm sorry for those of you that are like, why do you keep saying for those of you too young? There are some of you watching this right now that weren't around when this was going on, and you weren't aware of what was going on. I don't see how. But of course, the 80s. Sorry, I didn't mean it. Oh, there we go, talking down to people. I'm sorry, I didn't mean
talking down to people.
But the 80s, in the early 80s, gave us MTV, which was a platform that we never had before. So it allowed us. It gave us the power it gave the music industry the power of the music video. Yes. So you think of all of the mega stars now that have been in the business for over 40 years, the Madonnas and the late Michael Jackson, the late Prince Rogers Nelson. Full government issue. The Run DMCs and the Beastie Boys. A lot of those folks got their start because of MTV. And yes. MTV opened up a door to, Nick and I were discussing this before the show started. It opened up a door where there were all different types of music that folks didn't have exposure to before, because you may have lived in a small town of the population of 3,000 people, but now you've got coming into your television beamed from New York City, music from all over the world. Yes. And I think that, and don't get me wrong, Huey Lewis and the News were already a well-established band by the time this movie came along. But again, they were already here, put them on the map. And Power of Love and Back in Time, the two songs from Back to the Future, definitely solidified their place in the music scene in the 80s. And they already are an uber talented band. If you haven't listened to them, go check them out. They very musically talented. Huey Lewis has a classic, unique voice that nobody will ever be able to replicate. But yeah, definitely. And so that music made just as much a part of, and that's the other thing that I was going to get at. That we talked about this before with Purple Rain a couple episodes ago, is that it was not uncommon during the 80s for a song from a movie to become a hit song on the radio. Right. Because the song would be in the movie and then the video would pop out. And a lot of times the video would come out before the song came out. So you already were listening, you were already jamming to the song, and the song is, you got this earworm in your head. So you're watching the movie waiting for the song to pop up. Right. Or catch pieces from the. Oh, yeah. They would generally, what they would do is generally just put the band on just like a studio stage and have them playing the song, and then they would intersperse it with scenes from the movie. For a movie or something, yeah. And so you'll watch it, go, oh, I remember that scene, or oh, I remember such and such. Oh, hey, there's my song. So definitely a huge contribution to the film. And then last but not least, man, you know who we haven't talked about?
Who is that, sir?
The car.
The DeLorean. A car that really didn't last that long in production.
No, but lives on and pop
because of the movie,
because of this movie. Yeah. And you think about how many movies, television programs, characters that had a car as their signature. Right. You know, you had Batman. I think it was a 60-something Bonneville, if I'm not mistaken, for the original Batman.
No, Batman.
You know, and then I believe James Bond drove an Aston Martin. I could be wrong, but for the longest time he drove an Aston Martin. You know, you had, flash forward to Smokey and the Bandit, where you got Burt Reynolds riding around in his Trans Am with the Firebird painted, the black Trans Am with the gold Firebird. You know, the Dukes of Hazzard with the General Lee, Michael Knight with Kit. To some degree, Airwolf as a helicopter, you know what I mean? So that car, I think they put just as much thought process into what kind of car are we going to use, because this is going to play, and this is going to be an integral part of this entire trilogy. So, yeah, and like I said,
the DeLorean was only produced for 2 years, 1981 and 1982. The models were 1981 and 1983. So this car was only in production for 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
How about that?
A car that was only in production for 2 years. There's
probably one of the more well-known. If you said, "Do you know what a DeLorean is?" people will tell you, "Yes, I do."
Yep.
But if you ask them what a Coupe de Ville is, they probably tell you, "I have no idea what that is."
You got to be an old school player from the Himalayas to know about that Coupe de Ville, boy.
That's what I'm saying. And a Coupe de Ville was in production much longer than a DeLorean was, but you'll know what a DeLorean is before you know what a Coupe de Ville is.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah, exactly.
So I mean, it was a smooth car too. I was like, man, I'm gonna get me one of those. And then I had a classmate that actually had one. The parents had one, and I mean, we used to hate it. We're standing on the corner waiting on school over because again, that the innocence of being able to drop your kids off at the school and just leave them to stand there until the school opened up with no supervision. And kids' parents pull up, drop them off, and this one kid and they get out and it's like, whoa, that's so cool. I want one of those. And then 4 or 5 years later, I'm in high school. It's like, I remember that car. Whoa, that's a DeLorean. Yo, check out the mods, man. Like, we didn't call them mods back then, but still. Check out the modifications on that joint, man. And now it's part of pop culture nostalgia. Like, they'll still be talking about the 82, 83 DeLorean 40, 50 years from now because of this movie.
Absolutely. Absolutely, my friend.
So overall, I mean, and then again, another example of with the special effects, a movie that was ahead of its time in terms of what it did to generate the special effects for the movie and kind of set a new standard for special effects moving forward for films of that sort. I mean, I always wondered how they did the thing with the flames behind the car.
Oh yeah.
So basically, they would film the car, full speed come through, and then they would do. And what they would do is then they would film. They do gasoline.
You have to light 2 lines, right? You got to light
2 lines to get 2 lines of gasoline, and they would just light them up, and they would film the gasoline coming. You know what I mean? And then they would cut the whole thing together to make the complete scene. And that to me was one of the coolest things. Where like, man, you mean to tell me that car, like at 15 years old, 88 miles per hour had to be hella fast. That car drove by so fast it left flames.
Right, exactly. Right.
And now in middle age, I'm like 88 ain't that fast. Shoot, 88 is you got to drive in the slow lane. 88 on the freeway. The freeway these days to get run over.
Sometimes, right? Exactly.
Yes. Back to the Future, an absolute complete film from start to finish. Yes. Casting, story, plot, tying the whole thing together.
Music, score, everything.
The music, the score, right down to you could see a cartoon of a kid just wearing a pair of jeans, a beat up pair of sneakers, and a ski vest, the orange ski vest. And go, that's Marty McFly.
That's Marty McFly, right? Exactly.
To this day. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say about this one, man. I think we pretty much laid this one all the way out. We cut this one down to the good. Right? We cut this one down to the white, like Bernie Mac said, we bust it down to the white meat.
And there you have it.
There you have it. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we do appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Popcorn and Parachute Pants, talking about Back to the Future. Man, I tell you what, we are 5 episodes in, and every time you and I get together to do one of these, I just get so much nostalgia. It's almost like I have to remind myself afterwards that like I'm not 15, 16 years old anymore. Right. Because we've been taping this thing and like I find a whole lot of 80s music creeping its way back into my playlist.
Oh, for sure.
So,
for sure, my friend.
Definitely. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to get out of here. Nick, I'm going to let you take us out of here today.
Oh, that's so nice. Well, listen, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we thank you for another episode. I said, Back to the Future. I commend you, or I implore you, if you have not seen this film, take the 2 hours out of your life. You will love it. I guarantee, as my boy Nathan Snell would say.
Shout out to the Nate Snell podcast.
There you go. Well, listen, thank you all. Have a great week. And we'll catch you next time on Popcorn and Parachute Pants. Have a good one.
Be sure to like and subscribe for content and more
on your new home for podcasts and independent music
on the Zagnif One Radio Network.